What if the freezing distance currently breaking your heart in your marriage is actually the exact mechanism you need to finally wake up? You know the exhaustion. You spend years doing everything right, managing the house, raising the kids, keeping the peace, only to look across the room and realize you're living with a roommate who barely notices you exist. It's a specific, quiet kind of agony. You can't tell your aging parents because you don't want them losing sleep over you. And if you bring it up to your friends too many times, you usually just get handed hollow platitudes about looking on the bright side or keeping the lines of communication open. The romantic fairy tale has become a slow suffocation. It is time to develop a strategic exit strategy for the soul. To find that strategy, we have to look past modern psychology and open a 1,200-year-old esoteric Chinese text called the Huangdi Infujing. This is a manual of statecraft and strategy, historically used by emperors and generals, and it serves as a survival guide for a modern midlife marriage. The text opens with a directive: observe the way of heaven and execute its laws. This means stripping away your emotional illusions to look strictly at the objective, functional reality of how the world operates. Applying that law to your living room means you stop measuring your marriage by the metric of romance. At this stage in life, it is a practical, resource-sharing partnership. You might be wondering how things got so cold when you poured so much warmth into this family. You sacrificed, you accommodated, and somehow it only brought you profound pain. Look at this diagram of an unbalanced system. When you constantly overfunction and emit your energy outward to remove every obstacle for your partner, that energy hits a wall. Instead of returning as gratitude, it builds a thick barrier of rigid entitlement and neglect. The Yin Fu Jing captures this dynamic in 4 words: En Sheng Yu Hai, or grace in harm. It is the paradox that extending excessive grace, constantly shielding someone from the weight of their own responsibilities, actively breeds resentment and harm. Your suffering isn't because you failed to do enough. It is the mathematical consequence of a bottomless output that has stripped away the mutual respect required for a partnership to survive. His absolute neglect and thin-skinned cruelty contain a hidden gift. If he offered you just enough breadcrumbs of affection to keep you hoping, you would be trapped in the warm water. You would stay attached to a dying dynamic, living the rest of your life as a dependent vine wrapped around an empty shell. This severe coldness provides the shock required to shatter the romantic illusion and force a necessary emotional severance. Detachment begins by mentally demoting this person from the center of your universe to a functional background character. They are a roommate. They no longer hold the pen that writes your daily emotional state. His distance has nothing to do with your worth. It is the catalyst required to force you to stand in your own sovereignty. The Yin Fu Jing teaches a concept called the 3 thefts. It describes life and relationships as a constant exchange and consumption of energy. Clinging to a dysfunctional marriage leaves you energetically drained, robbed of vitality to sustain an empty connection. Stop asking why you aren't loved. Sever that outward drain. This forces your life force to flow back into yourself. Take every ounce of effort you used to spend analyzing his moods and redirect it into pragmatic targets. Build your physical health, accumulate your financial wealth, pursue intellectual growth, cultivate absolute inner peace. Midlife clarity means moving away from the role of a passive victim of emotional theft. You become an active reclaimer of your own time and energy. This leads to the strategic practice of daily forgiveness before sleep. This isn't about surrendering to bad behavior. It is a refusal to waste a single drop of tomorrow's energy on yesterday's garbage. When you strip away the illusions, it becomes clear that marriage and life were never meant to be a quest for completion by someone else. You arrive at a state of emotional untouchability. Your inner peace becomes a fortress, no longer disturbed by his silence, anger, or indifference. Through the alchemy of detachment, you leave the role of the neglected caretaker behind. In her place stands a sovereign force, someone who has finally become her own sanctuary.